Hi there, nice of you to pop in to see my latest job. My name is Ross and I renovate homes for living. For the last couple of weeks I've been working on making kitchen cabinets, these ones, and I've also filmed a video on how to make your own cabinets. However, it was getting a bit too long. I don't like videos that are longer than 15 minutes, and apparently most of you don't like them either. So I've decided to split it in 3 different parts. First part is how to make the carcasses, second how to make the panel doors, and then the third and final one will be how to make dovetail drawers. If you're interested in watching that, at the end of part number 3, I will also tell you exactly how much it costs to build this unit. So I hope you enjoy it. Now we first start with the design. As you can see here, I'm using SketchUp, but you don't have to use any software. You can do it on a piece of paper as long as you have the measurements right. That's the most important thing. I won't be going in details in terms of how to do the math because that's a separate video on its own. So if that's something you want to see, let me know down in the comments. One thing I'll give you a tip on is make sure you deduct the height of the cornice and the legs from the height of your cabinets. Otherwise you might end up with the wrong measurements. And then also another tip, consider the thickness of the material, otherwise your cabinets might end up either taller or wider. So we start with a process that I call flat packing, which is essentially cutting all the pieces for the cabinets that we need. This is melamine, so we're doing 2 passes. For the first one is just a couple of millimeters beneath the surface so we can score the melamine, and the second one is full pass so we can actually cut the piece. Now that this is done, I like to get my pocket holes and plates for the legs prior to assembling the unit. You can see me doing that here. You can do that at a later stage. I think it's just easier to do it when everything's in pieces. Those are the plates for the legs that we're using. I like to use those plastic adjustable legs because it's very rarely that you'd see a floor that's even, so the adjustability on the legs gives you a little bit of a play in terms of making it easier for you to fit the units. Now I'm cutting the long pieces here. The factory edge on this one was a bit manky, so I'm cutting it a bit longer, and then I'll flip it in a second, you'll see, and I'll flip it over, and then I will do a final cut to the desired length. We're doing the same thing with the 2 passes. We do not want to tear that melamine. This is the inside of the cabinet, so we want to have a nice and clean cut. Now you can get a saw with a scoring blade. Festo has one, but like anything Festo, it's not cheap. Or you can get one of those panel saws that you find in commercial grade joinery shops. However, I have neither of those things, so for the time being I'm still using my circular saw, which by the way I like very much, and I'm not sponsored by them in any way. I've paid for it, about £80. I just like it, I genuinely like it. Now inside those cabinets we have adjustable shelves, and when it comes to adjustable shelves I like to make a throwaway jig. So that allows me to just align it with a piece, clamp it, and drill my holes. Then what I'll do is I'll flip it on the other side and do exactly the same thing, making sure that my holes are perfectly aligned and I don't have to measure a million times on the piece. So you can see me doing that now. And then after that we can do exactly the same thing on the opposite piece. So that means when the cabinet's assembled and we put our shelves inside, they're going to sit flat on those pins and we won't have any wobble. And then it's time to flip the piece to the outside and then drill the pocket holes. In case you're wondering what those pocket holes are there for, they're there so we can attach the frame. There's a bunch of different ways you can attach the frame to the cabinet. One of them is you can use a nail gun and just pin them in place. However, that means that you'd have to go and then fill the nail heads before you paint it. With the pocket holes we can just screw them through the back. That means that there's nothing to fill on the front. And then keep in mind those sides will have side panels, so none of that will be seen. And then we're off to the assembly table. So we gotta put all the pieces together now. Isn't that fun? Now let me tell you, those corner clamps are an absolute lifesaver when it comes to assembling cabinets, especially for big ones like that. Otherwise you'd have to hold it in place while you're drilling. which is not as fun as it sounds. From then on, it's quite simple. We just drill a pilot hole, countersink it, and then screw it in place. It is very important to countersink those holes because otherwise our screw head would crack the melamine. I don't know what you're thinking, this is the outside, that's actually the top of it. It won't be seen, but nevertheless it's just a nice little touch. Now you may have noticed on the original design we had the drawers on the left hand side and the shelves on the right hand side. However, prior to me starting to build the unit, we had a chat with a customer and they have requested if we can switch the places of the tow units. It's due to the electrical points, because this unit is going to be for an American style fridge freezer. Obviously we need a power socket inside one of those cabinets, and preferably it's the one with the shelves. So the nearest socket would be on the left hand side, so we're just switching the places, which isn't a problem for me at this stage. At just building the carcasses, they're just identical. So the only adjustment that needed to be made was when hanging the doors, I needed to make sure that they open to the opposite direction of what they originally were meant to be. Now you can see here why I wanted to install my plates for the legs prior to assembling the unit. Now you can certainly install them at this stage, however it's not going to be as easy. It's much easier to have your piece flat and just screw it from the top instead of trying to align it now when the cabinet is lying on its back. So this is why I do it. It just makes it a little bit easier for me. As we're almost done assembling the pieces, the next stage would be to attach the back. However, I really wanted to get the cabinet off the assembly table and lay it flat on the floor so I can attach the back, because I was worried if I do that on the assembly table it might become a bit heavy and awkward to lift for me, and I didn't want to lift it and drop it and damage it in the process. So here's me doing it now, which is not something I recommend, because at this stage with no back the cabinet is not very strong. So especially a big cabinet like that, if you push it a bit too much it could quite easily snap. So I would certainly recommend you get someone to help you at this stage. However, I was on my own, so I did what I had to do. Now when it comes to backs, I like to use a solid piece for my base units, and I do consider that a base unit even though it's a tall one. You can disagree with me in the comments if you want to. And the reason I like to use solid back is because first of all, it gives the cabinet a little bit more strength, and also if you make sure your back is square, it would pull your cabinet in square too. And when it comes to installing them, it's unlikely that you pull them out of square. And how many times did I say square in one sentence? Well, probably a bit too many. Anyways, the process here is the same. We drill a pilot hole, countersink it, and then we screw it in place. We do that on all sides, and there's a little tip here. So my side panel was pushing in a little bit, so I put a screw which allowed me to pull it out and screw it and then pin it in place, so we have a nice flush side. Mind you, that hole is not a problem because we are going to have side panels on that side which are going to be pinned with an 18 gauge brad nail, so really doesn't matter. If you know me or if you follow me on social media, you're probably aware that I don't like melamine very much. Now my favorite material when it comes to cabinet making is plywood. I would rather make all of my cabinets out of plywood, and I can probably do a whole video explaining why I like plywood more than anything else. However, on this particular project the customer wanted white cabinets and they wanted that melamine, so this is what we're doing. But I've got to tell you, it was not as bad as I thought it would be. So who knows, maybe in the future I'll make a few more cabinets out of melamine. Now, as I've said, for this video I've decided to split it in 3 different parts. Mainly because I don't like videos that are longer than 15 minutes. It's just my personal opinion. When I'm watching stuff on YouTube, which I do a lot, I don't enjoy something that's half an hour or an hour's long. I think it's a bit too long So 15 minutes is enough for me. I'm not trying to drag it, but when it comes to making the doors or the dovetail drawers, I think having a separate video of them where I can spend a little bit more time explaining is going to be beneficial. So we've got the cabinet ready, and now we've got to make the shelves. So we've got 3 shelves in this one. So the first thing we do is cut the width, and the way we do that is by measuring the internal width of the cabinet and then subtracting 2 millimeters off of that measurement, which would give us enough place so we can put the shelf on the pins without it sticking to the sides of the cabinet. Now another thing I want to do is trim slightly the depth of the shelf. The reason I want to do that is so the shelf sits slightly recessed, and that way we can make sure that the door is not going to hit it, which is unlikely, but if it's recessed by 20 millimeters, we can make absolutely certain that this is not going to happen. And here we have the aforementioned pins. So we just put them in the hole and tap them in place. That's it, just simple as that. You can get those in Screwfix, they're incredibly cheap, and we're putting the rest of them now. So down the line, should you choose to adjust the height of your shelves, you can just pull them out and just put them in different holes based on your requirements, and then put the shelves back on top of them. It's quite simple. So our cabinet is almost ready. As you can see, I've already made the other one. So if you have any questions, let me know in the comments. I'll be happy to answer them for you. And I hope I'll see you next week when we make the doors for those units.